that speaking to an island, to a crowd, it's not quite so simple. I do compliment you because you stepped into the beach at the last minute. But I actually think about this. I must tell you the whole week before. It's on my mind. What shall I say? Shall I say this? Shall I say that? I cannot, and some people can do that, I cannot just stand up and start talking. It just doesn't work. You've got to prepare well. So a good idea would be give them a week's notice. This month is early, I think that's it now. Right? Next month, I'll tell you what, draw up a whole list and everyone will know weeks ahead when it's their turn. Not would you do it the last minute, you're on this and this, you're on, it gets a bit, But for stepping in the beach is certainly very complimentary, I must say. A story that happened to me this morning, I thought it's worthwhile repeating. It actually happened to me this morning. I managed to get there with miracles in time for slichas. I must tell you, it's quite a tough time. Davening and slichas and fasting, and to crown it all with let's not fool ourselves, it's quite a tough time. I mean, even there's some people say that if you manage to survive all the davenings and the fastings and the this and the slichas, so you probably survive the whole year after that, right? But not everybody finds it so simple, and you should know if you're finding it a bit tough, what's in the balance is well worthwhile. Well, this morning I got there for slichas, and do you know what geschikt means? Geschikt. Geschikt, if a person is geschikt, it's a Yiddish word, and or not geschikt. Geschikt is some people, whatever they do, they put their hands to, it works nicely. So, like, for example, making a cholent. Never ever made a cholent before in their lives. They buy a few things, they put salt, pepper, that, and it's beautiful. And that's a person who's geschikt. You get another person who's not geschikt, he can have made it 25 times before and it still doesn't work somehow. It's the nature of a person. I've never ever made a cholent, I must tell you, so I don't want to give myself a bad name. But I'm not from the type who are geschikt. I'm a little bit ungeschikt. Ungeschikt means like you've got two left legs, It's not also, and I was davening, and my hat was on the side, and my hat fell down. So I bent down to pick it up, and usually I know the area where my head is, so when I bend down I make sure that I don't bang my head into the wall. That would be a bit stupid to do that, right? But I actually had tefillin on, and when I bent down I didn't reckon with the tefillin, and I gave my tefillin quite a nasty bang on the wall. Oh, right. If tefillin fall, people fast. And banging a tefillin is not such a wonderful thing to do. And just before Rosh Hashanah, just before Yom Kippur, it got me a bit nervous, a bit worried. So when I took my tefillin off, it happened this morning. So I inspected them and I saw there was a little mark on the top. Tefillin has to be perfectly square. Modern technology is used to make it, and the tip has to be exactly sharp. It can get worn down after a while, right? And it's tefillin not as it should be, so it's a mum, it's a blemish in the whole mitzvah. And I took them off, and I wasn't very happy with what I saw. I thought, I know a sofer, and his name is Spitzer, right? And he's got his workshop where he makes the tefillin, somewhere in Yerushalayim. I'll book him out, I'll go along and ask him to inspect my tefillin. Now that would have taken me a whole morning. I'd have to phone him up, have to go there, he would have to inspect them, have to get back. And if it's available. If it's not available, then I couldn't even do it. So I was a bit worried. As I go out, but I thought, but surely there's a sofa in Ramot here somewhere. Right? I don't have to go all the way there. This Nosson Spitzer, I knew him, so it was the first choice. But I thought, why go all the way? I'll find out who the sofa is here. I know who he is. I'll phone him up, make an appointment, and he'll inspect my tefillin to find out how they're doing, right? I go out of now Ramot, has got 3 stories. Comma Aleph, comma Beis, comma Gimel. Then there's a shtibel. Then there's another one which is called Oyel Avam. And all those shuls these days are packed. And there's one minion going on after the other. To try and find somebody in that atmosphere is like looking for a needle in a haystack. And what I'm telling you is absolutely true. As I go out of the Beis HaMedrash, right, who do I bump into? The sofa. Right? Just by chance. And we all know that nothing happens by chance. So I said, look, I've got a bit of a problem with my friend. He's a very nice guy. He said, yeah, no problem, I've got to see you in 5 minutes. So let's have a look at them. So I gave it to him on the spot. He looked at it and he said, no problem. But he says, while I'm looking at it, I'll look at your Vesuvius at the same time. And he found that part of the Vesuvius, the ink, had rubbed off. He says, this is a real problem. So he took out of his pocket a little thing of dye, of black dye, right? And he patched up my tefillin, put them in beautiful order, and he says, you know what happened to you? You know why? I told him the story. I met him just like that, out of chance. You know what happened? Because your tefillin needed to be repaired. So Hashem organised it that you bang them, and no. So this was a wonderful example of what you call hashgacha pratis. Everything worked out, and the whole thing took me, I'm not exaggerating, not more than 5 minutes. Had I gone to the other side, it would have taken me the whole morning. My children were put in perfect order, and it gave me quite a lift. I was feeling a bit depressed, when one thinks during the whole year, one's not exactly perfect, and if you're honest with yourself, you wonder what the future's going to hold, so you can get a bit down. And this kind of gave me a bit of a lift. It was a simple min Shemayim that Hashem is always with you, but sometimes we don't realise it exactly. And so I thought that was an interesting story, which one can learn quite a lot from. That's number one. Now this week says it is Vayelech. Just a quick vod on. Is anybody here from last year? Do you remember what we said on Vayelech last year? Anybody? No. You remember?
No.
Yeah. It's happened before that. Anyway, I'm sure as soon as I begin saying it, say, oh yes. Yeah. To be cool. It's there. Everything which you hear and which you see is there stored in your brain. Quite an awesome thought when you come to think. A man of 99 was asked, true story, what did your kindergarten look like? So he said, are you crazy? He says, I'm 99 years old. How do you expect me to remember what happened to me when I was younger than 5? They put him under hypnosis, and they took him all the way back to his children. He was able to describe clearly what his kindergarten was. Why? It was all stored there. This little brain that a person's got, quite phenomenal. There's no end to what you can store, and it's a bit frightening as well because there's lots of things there which you're not too happy to store. Right, okay, but one has to be careful. But one has to know about this because it's quite. How did we get to this just now? Talking about Vayelech. Like we said, the section begins with Vayelech, and Moshe went. Right? Now we all know that a malach is a spiritual being. Exactly what a malach is. We hear a malach is described by Nevi'im, they're described, they've got wings and so on, but they are a spiritual entity. And we all know that a malach has got no Yetzer Hara. Right? As the malach is created, that's how he is. That's why a Yid stands higher than a malach. Because if we do a mitzvah, we've got a force which is trying to stop us. And if we do it, so it's considered great. A malach does it automatically. Chazal say that a malach has got one leg. One leg symbolizes staying in one place. You remember it now? Good. Right? It's standing in one place. You don't need no movement. There's no movement going better and there's no movement getting worse. A human being is created with 2 legs. Of course, we take it for granted now. Right? 2 legs. Right? But 2 legs symbolizes movement. A human being is created for movement. We're never, ever, ever standing in the same place. We're either advancing or getting worse. So this was the last day of Moshe Rabbeinu's life. He was 120, and he knew he was about to depart. And so Vayelech Moshe. Moshe went even on the last day of Moshe Rabbeinu's life. Life is so precious, and one can do such a lot with it. He was advancing, he was gaining, and he was getting higher and higher madrigas. That's why it says Vayelech Moshe, and Moshe went. And just talking about, I heard also a true story. I just remembered it now. But sometimes the chesed which Yidden do is quite unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Somebody told me this story, and they told me the name of the family. The name of the family was Gordon. And this fellow Gordon, he was quite a kind fellow, and he was busy with the Chevra Kaddish and different mitzvahs. A child was born, and the child had no arms, no hands, baby, and only one leg. Just imagine. When the mother was confronted with this child, she ran away. She couldn't cope with it. So this baby was left in the hospital without anybody being interested. This fellow, Rabbi Gordon, whoever he was, he saw what was going on. He spoke over to his wife, with his wife. They had their own family, by the way, quite a few children. And he said to his wife, are you prepared to take this on? The baby's got nothing, got even hands and one leg. True story, quite unbelievable. And the wife and him decided they would take it on. And they adopted this child. And 45 years later, right, this looked after him. This child, during the course of his life, got married, was a Ger Chassid, and had children. Quite phenomenal, right? The whole story. That is Chesed at its very best, right? So this is a story which is worthwhile recording as well. Towards the end of this Peseder, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu got 3 promises from Hashem. One promise he got from Hashem was that the Torah will never ever be forgotten from Klal Yisrael. There was a time in the Romans when the Romans destroyed all the Talmidei Chachamim. Rabbi Akiva was left with 5 Talmidim, and he started from scratch. But he says, the Torah will never ever be forgotten from. That's number 1. Number 2 promises that no non-Jew, however great he is, will have Ruach HaKodesh. Will have divine. He can be a wonderful person, an honest person, but Ruach HaKodesh, HaKodesh Baruch Hu will only give his spirit only. And Ruach HaKodesh was very common amongst our greats. Chavetz Chaim, the stories tell a penny of his Ruach HaKodesh. Somebody went into the Lubavitcher Rebbe, it was a bit of a frightening experience when you went in by yourself. And you had questions to ask, and you could forget the questions, and you could forget. It's a very nervous experience to actually, you and just with the Rebbe. So what the custom was, they were given 2 bits of paper. On 1 bit of paper you wrote your problems, your 6 or 7 or 8 questions. Right? On the other piece of paper was a blank, and you went in and you had a pencil or pen, and you gave the Rebbe the questions, because you could get tongue-tied, and you couldn't get the questions out. You gave the questions to the Rebbe. The Rabbi gave you the answers, what you were looking for, and you wrote them down. So the whole thing went smoothly. Somebody went into the Rabbi, he's very nervous, he gives the Rabbi the paper with the questions, right? And the Rabbi looks at it, gives you the answer to 6 or 7 questions. He writes down the answer, thank you very much. The Rabbi gave him a bracha, and he went out. And when he went out, he had to look on the piece of paper which he had actually written down the answers. And on the other side, what was on the other side? The questions. What he had actually given the Rebbe was the blank piece of paper. That didn't stop him from answering all the 7 questions. There's lots and lots and lots of stories. I've got a friend, he's called Dr. Gerber, and he was teaching the husband in primary school. There was Adam Godel here. He had a few problems in Chinuch. He went in to ask him the questions, and before he could ask him the questions, he told him all the answers. This is very, very common the Chavetz Chaim foresaw what would be in the future when the black clouds of the Nazis started to spread over Europe. What would be with the Torah? What would be? The Chavetz Chaim quoted the Pasuk and says, "But Har Sion year later, the Har Sion would be the main center. Har Sion, Eretz Yisrael, would be the main center of learning. 70, 80 years later, you see it's quite clear. The main center, right? You've got one yeshiva here in Eretz Yisrael, which has got more yeshiva bochim than the whole of Europe all put together. It's not saying that in these places Torah isn't blossoming, in America and all over the world, but the Chavetz Chaim said that 80 years ago it wasn't any problem. So what was the first thing? Torah will never be forgotten. Ruach HaKodesh will never be, and no non-Jew will ever have Ruach HaKodesh. And what was the third thing? Ruach HaKodesh. And Hashem will never ever change the Jewish people for another nation. Sometimes we're at a very low ebb, and we're not doing as we should. Right? First God made a promise, He will never ever change. That's the reason why such terrible things happen. Because God can't just open the door and say, get out. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu is kind of stuck with us. So one way or the other, we have to listen. If we listen in a good way, fine. If not, then Chas v'Shalom, goodness knows what can happen. So those are the three promises which Hashem made. Now, just something to do with Yom Kippur after all that's on the horizon. We'll be busy. We mentioned on Rosh Hashanah, we don't mention Al-Chet, sinning, Hashem, the Begav, but by Gum, on, is that an American word, by Gum? Nobody knows it. It's an expression in English. I was surprised. We say Al-Chet, which is 2.5 pages. We say it on the Mincha before, and we say it all together 9 times. And you kind of, it gets a bit much. My personal experience, I can't be honest. I must be honest. I can't say that every single time I said Al-Chet, I had my heart in it. And as it gets through all Shachris, I think to myself, well, we've said it Mincha, and we said it twice in Ma'ariv, when you quiet Shemona Esrei, and when the Chazan repeats, and we've had it twice in Shachris, that's 5, only 4 times to go. Makes it a bit easier. But it's a bit of a job to do on Yom Kippur. Then we're busy with Oshamnu, B'Gavnu, B'Zalnu, banging away. And what's Oshamnu? It's general terms. Goes according to the Aleph base. So I came across this little printout, and it's got here, for instance, it starts off with Oshamnu, using the Aleph. He writes a whole list of possible things which went wrong in the year to do with Aleph. So to go through the whole list is even 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Right? For example, he says here, Ochalnu, we ate, besuda she'ena mafsekes lebalaya. If somebody offers you some food and they haven't got enough for themselves, and you know that, and you take the food and you eat it, it's a bit of an avera. Why are you taking food when they haven't got enough for themselves? That's nothing that a person does the whole year is unrecorded, it's all recorded. We've got a list as long as your arm, but I thought maybe a good idea if we would try, make an experiment. So using the word Aleph, what would, just one suggestion for anybody here, what would you suggest would be a good thing, when you're saying Oshamnu, which is the Aleph, that covers what particular thing which needs smartening up, or which is an Avera, or a mitzvah. Any ideas, anybody? Anybody? I'll help you out, because we're running out of show. Ochalnu ma'acholos hasuros min haTorah milabon. During the course of the year, we must have eaten something which is also, maybe Deraisa milabon. Who knows? Not yet. That's ochalnu. Or anything to do with food, to do with eating. Did we make a bracha before? Did we make a bracha after? And when we made the bracha, did we have kavanah when we said, just we got, let's do that. That's just the Aleph. Let's go on for the base. What would you suggest would be a good suggestion for base? There's a whole list for each one. Right? It's no use just banging away Hashem the Begav. You might as well say the Aleph base to Hashem. Aleph base, Gimel, Dalet. Well, you've got to be a bit sincere. You've got to know what you're doing. You must have some regret in what you're doing. What would you say would be a good focus for a base? I picked out a whole list here. Time is running out. We won't have enough time. Anybody got any ideas what could be base? To do with the yeshiva. What about Bittul Torah? What about Bittul Torah? You know, Rabbi Wasserman, he had stories all the way through. But there's time which we could have spent learning and we wasted our time. Who can say they use every moment at the time? And the same as the mitzvah of Talmud Torah is the greatest mitzvah possible, wasting Torah is the opposite. Considered a very, very grave avera. So one has to learn. Rabbi Wasserman, he was a poor man. He was martyred by the Germans. You know the whole story, which you haven't got time to tell now. He was the Talmud of the Chafetz Chaim. He was one of the Gedolei Hador. He was a very poor man, and his shoes were all tattered and torn. Right? Tattered. So his Talmidim thought that he hadn't have money to buy new shoes. So his Talmidim all thought they'll all give a donation, they'll all buy him a pair of shoes, and honouring their Rebbe. So they bought a pair of shoes. He took one look at them, and he rejected it. He said, why Rebbe? Why? It's a sorcery of Talmidim, you make them all happy. He said, because this wasn't just a fancy speech. He said, because my other shoes were slips on. The shoes that you bought me are laces. It's going to take me more time. So they were Shiloh of Bittul Torah. You understand that? How long does it take to tie shoelaces? So base could be Beaton Torah. What about Gimel? Anybody got anything for Gimel? Ashamnu, Bogadnu, Gazamnu, Gimel. Gimel could be maybe Gil Arayas. Person's got a very strong Yetzirah, a very strong force, which attracts people to things which are not all that kosher. And during the course of the year, whoever you are, however great you are, this is a force which is necessary in the human beings, because else there wouldn't be a continuity of the generations. So this has to be used at the right time, the right place. But unfortunately, the Yetzirah gets the better of us. And so it's worthwhile when you say Gimel, think of all the situations. And one has to think a little bit of, to say that I'll go through the whole year and I won't do any bit of Torah, it's not being very realistic. I mean, come on. I mean, who can stand up and say that? We're standing before Hashem. So the answer is we'll make an effort. We'll improve on it. So that's the next thing. What about Daled? Any ideas of Daled? Daled. Any ideas? Daled. What about, we spoke Lashon Hara. Huh? And the Gemara says that everybody is nichshal in Lashon Hara. If not actually Lashon Hara, but Avat Lashon Hara, which is the dance, which is something nice. And when you speak Lashon Hara, it says HaKadosh Baruch Hu will forgive Gil Arayos, immorality, Shvichas Dam in murder, and Avodah Zarah, but Hashem is not prepared to forgive Lashon Hara. It's considered a very, very grave crime. The Chofetz Chaim devoted all his life in telling us. So we stand on Yom Kippur, we want Hashem to forgive us, so that would be good for Dalet. Right, what about Hay? Any ideas? Right, one can't always control one's thoughts, and whether we like it or not, we will be brought before Hashem to be judged even for our thoughts. It's quite a frightening. I mean, my thoughts, I've got my thoughts and nobody else knows that, so yeah, but thoughts are known by Hashem as well. So, Hay stands for heroes, thoughts, so that's a Hay. What about Vov? Vov. Any ideas for Vov? Now, I'm giving you one particular thing. And don't forget, Yom Kippur is such a most fantastic, wonderful day if you have the right spirit and you go through it with a sincerity and you mean and you treat it seriously, so the slate gets wiped clean. It's a Yom Tov. It's the most wonderful day of the whole year. The whole Yom Tov in Yisrael, there's never Yom Tov. That's why at the end of Yom Kippur everybody bursts out down, not because it's over and we can eat now, because it starts a new fresh. So I'd like to take this opportunity once again of wishing everybody have an easy fast and make use of the time which is allotted. Sometimes it gets a bit tough, but the tougher it is, the bigger the mitzvah. Right? So that's a bit of a consolation. And if one makes the effort, one gets the help from above. There's no question about it, one gets the help from above. So once again, I wish you a Shana Tova, and we shall have a Gemar Chasima Tova.